This is where AMC is going to help us come bridge that gap. So AMC is going to allow us to see insights into customers' entire journey. So I'll be able to see what were the DSP ads someone saw, what were the sponsored display ads someone saw, where did they take shopping events like add to cart and add to wish list. I can see that full journey, and that can help me understand not only the impact of these upper funnel ads or even some of my lower funnel ads, but also understand which ad types I should be pushing more dollars to try to move more people down, my optimal paths that are driving my highest conversion rates.
If you're an agency, AMC expertise is now table stakes, and you cannot go into sales calls without being able to articulate what it is.
But I appreciate everybody jumping on today. We're super excited to walk through some stuff on the AMC side of things after some of the AMC announcements that came out last week at Accelerate. If you haven't heard, at Accelerate last week, Amazon made AMC by default available for every sponsored ads advertiser. So if you go into your sponsored ads account or one of the brands that you work with sponsored ads account, you'll now see AMC activated or right under your insight section there. And so that's creating more of a push from a lot of brands on the need for AMC. And here at Intentwise, we've been working with AMC for several years now. So been able to come up with some strong use cases that are applicable for a lot of brands or a majority of brands. And so really want to take today's session, whether you're with an agency or with a brand, and talk through as you're working with brand partners, as you're working with your stakeholders, what are the use cases that we can start to look at to help get that initial understanding out of AMC, and then what are the next steps that come out of that. So we'll be covering some of the basics with AMC, what some initial insights we can start to pull out of, how we can use audiences and bid boosting to start to drive some additional results, and then we'll wrap up from there. Shrinath, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we have an agenda slide here, right? So if you roll into that for
I
a second.
don't know as if we do.
Oh,
So
you.
we'll go straight into everything. But yeah, I think those will be the three main points we cover is just a little bit of an intro on what is AMC for those of you who may not be familiar, some insights and queries that we can look to start polling to generate some value for your brands. And then we'll keep talking about audiences and bid boosting towards the end as well.
I think the main point here is there is a section here upfront where we are covering some basics. One thing is to understand what's possible and available from AMC, and also in client conversations, especially if you're in prospecting mode as an agency, how do we talk about it? I think the first 3 to 4 slides, what we're trying to do here is just simplify this narrative and story around how to articulate what AMC is to some new person. That's our goal. So let's keep this rolling.
So yeah, like Shrinath mentioned, to start off, just give a brief overview of what AMC is, try to simplify that a little bit for you. So if we think about what a typical customer's journey might be as they're moving throughout the different ad types that we have on Amazon, right? This could be DSP, this could be sponsored brand, non-branded ads, branded ads, right? So typically within Amazon's attribution model, right, as someone moves through these typical customer journeys, which might be something like this, where I start with an upper funnel, maybe I start with DSP impressions and DSP clicks. Then we move someone down into the lower funnel, and there's lots of different touch points that we could have here, right? I could have sponsored product clicks. I could have actions such as someone adding a product to cart, adding a product to their list. And by default, this path can be very difficult for us to have deep insights into. Right? If you're not familiar with Amazon's attribution model, all of the sales that we get attributed that are relevant to an ad interaction by default are going to get attributed to that last interaction, right? So in this example, we wouldn't know that the add to wish happened. We wouldn't know that there was a DSP ad click or a DSP ad impression. And so it can be tough for us to know the impact that these upper funnel or even some of our lower funnel ads are having in driving those full funnel conversions. So you have that disconnect between the upper funnel and the lower funnel because of that last trick attribution, and we don't have insight into shopping events such as add to wish list and add to cart. This is where AMC is going to help us come bridge that gap. So AMC is going to allow us to see insights into customers' entire what were the DSP ads someone saw, what were the sponsored display ads someone saw, where did they take shopping events like add to cart and add to wish list. I can see that full journey, and that can help me understand not only the impact of these upper funnel ads or even some of my lower funnel ads, but also understand which ad types I should be pushing more dollars to try to move more people down, my optimal paths that are driving my highest conversion rates. Right. So this is where, like I mentioned, AMC comes into play, connecting all of those different points into one place.
The key thing here is every activity, every interaction is stored at an individual shopper level in AMC. There's literally a field called user ID. Every one of us that shops on Amazon gets a unique user ID, and against each user ID, all these events are tracked within AMC. Now, you cannot go there and look up, hey, what did Kenton do? You can't do that. Those are clean room constraints, but you can build cohorts. And what makes AMC unique is the grain of that data. Okay. Big, on top of which you can build cohorts and do a whole bunch of stuff. I think we will have webinars coming up. We'll dive into the AMC console itself and literally get into the weeds on each table and what you can do, but that will come at a later time. For right now, it's shopper level signals that are made available to AMC. So, and honestly, if you go to the next slide, this is a picture I would just keep in mind. And if you're in a exec meeting and you want to articulate to somebody and somebody's asking you what AMC is, what have you, in very, very simple terms, think of it as a place that has all the shoppers that are interacting with your brand and all their interactions. They're also called events. And there's broadly two types of events: advertising events, impressions, clicks, conversions; shopping events, which is add to cart, add to wish list, so on and so forth. So I would screenshot it or whatever, but keep this in your mind in terms of, and this has been very helpful for us in the way we have been articulating what AMC is when we are asked that question.
Awesome. I think that's great context. So I think kind of to wrap that up on what is AMC, what does it enable us to do, right? We have that understanding of why AMC is a need, but wanted to also frame what we can do with AMC. And most of this is going to fall into two buckets, which we'll cover today. First is going to be insights, right? So I want to have an understanding of that data that we're just looking at, right? What is the revenue that's being driven by people that are being brought into my ad funnel by a DSP ad, right? That's an example that we'll walk through from an insights perspective to help us find out the effectiveness of what we're currently doing so we can optimize more towards that. And then the second is audience design. So we can take all of those different signals that we're getting in there and create custom audiences off of that to help us drive stronger conversion rates or stronger lifetime value. We'll touch more on specifically how we're interacting with that later. That's going to be the second lever of what we're doing. So I might create an audience of everybody who added my product to cart but hasn't purchased yet. I might create an audience of people who saw, a DSP ad but haven't seen a sponsored product ad yet. So those are a couple of examples of how we can take those insights, turn them into audiences, and we'll talk more about that later. But just wanted to frame this as the two main levers that we're utilizing AMC practically.
And with just one more point here, Kenton, is for everybody on the call, when it comes to AMC, there's a lot that can be done. The key here is to start framing a simple roadmap for yourself. And the roadmap, very simply, literally two columns: insights and audiences, and start listing questions of things you care about and want to answer, as well as audience ideas. And it is about starting a short list and evolving them. Of course, we are here to help you understand what's possible versus not. But I think having a sense of that roadmap, whether it's you running your own ads or working with an agency, if so, talk to the agency. And if the agency is on this call, that's another vehicle of interaction with clients. Build a roadmap. Okay, what insights could be interesting that could change some decision? And what audiences do you want to explore? So
that's a great perspective. I think we're about to walk through a couple introductory use cases, but we've always found that the highest value that comes from AMC is when you start to ask questions that are relevant to the business issues that you're currently facing, right? And just exploring how AMC can help solve those. How can we use audiences to help solve those? So that's a great point, that developing that roadmap specifically to the business issues that you're having is where you're going to start to really draw the most value out of AMC.
quick anecdote. Keith is on the call. One of the questions he had asked us was, "Hey, can AMC help me understand how many of my non-brand searches involved shoppers looking for my brand search before that?" Super interesting. But AMC can help us get to those types of questions. Sorry, Kenton, for the digression.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, and then Keith actually put a comment here saying like 10 to 15% of non-brand searches actually were preceded by brand searches. So I think it helps you think about ad dollars and whether or not you're bucketing them the right way when you measure things. There's already a question: do you need to have DSP campaigns to use AMC audiences with sponsored ads? The answer is no. There has
Yeah.
been this perception around AMC, at least in the past, saying, oh, you only get AMC when you have DSP, and that may all been the case. All that has now changed. There's value even if you just did sponsored ads from AMC.
Yeah, that was the case at one point. So I think that's why a lot of that perception is around there. But That's changed about this time last year, and it's becoming even more accessible with with Amazon's announcements at Accelerate. So definitely accessible, and we would recommend using it in your sponsored ads campaigns. And we'll touch on some exact audience use cases for sponsored ads campaigns as well.
Let me take one question and we'll get into the next segment. Andrew is asking the question, are vendors available to use AMC if not using DSP? Absolutely. In fact, I'll just add, and this is something we'll cover in a later session. If you're 1P vendors, AMC now provides a 5-year look back on all purchases down to the shopper ID. There's a 60-day trial on it, and after that, you have to pay $500 a month. But depending on the scale and size, you can now get down to understanding repeat purchase behavior, customer lifetime value. Did I pick the right products for deals on Prime Day? What did the people who I acquired through those deals do over the next X months? Is it worth it? Is it not? Things get super interesting with all that. Short answer, yes. Vendors are able to do AMC. You don't need to be doing DSP. In particular for vendors, see, 3P sellers had a view into repeat purchase behavior and lifetime value through some of the reports in Seller Central, but 1P had no idea. AMC has just changed that.
Andrew, I would say clean answer, yes, you can absolutely use AMC. We would definitely encourage use AMC. And there's lots of valuable use cases that come out specifically for vendors. So happy to, I think we'll like Srinath mentioned, we'll probably have a session on that in the future. But if you have initial questions, please feel free to reach out and we can walk through that a little bit more in depth on what those use cases might be specifically for a vendor. We're kind of going to walk into a couple common use cases that we found to be valuable across most brands for AMC. But I think, again, want to frame this as like a starting ground, right? Some of these are Amazon's instructional queries. A couple of these last two that we'll look at are things that we've created out Intentwise to help drive some additional value there as well. And if you're using Intentwise, these are all things that you can execute out of the box. But this is definitely just, again, a starting place. The real value from AMC is going to come up where you guys start asking the business questions that you're truly facing. And using AMC to answer those is where AMC will drive the most value for your individual brands. So wanted to add that frame as this is a place where we can start, get your feet wet with AMC, and then we can have individual conversations on how we can, bring AMC to the full power for your individual use cases. So I'm going to jump over to kind of walk through these 4 use cases that we have laid out here. So we're going to start with path to conversion. So I'm just in Intentwise here now, but path to conversion is actually something that is available by default in the Amazon console as well. Visually, it'll look different. Some of the data visualizations will be different, but the core data set is available through an instructional query in Amazon Marketing Cloud directly in the Amazon console. So if you're not using Intentwise, that's another way that you can start to activate this. But if you are using Intentwise for AMC, you can execute this query pretty easily as well and get this visual generated. Really, the value that we're going to be looking for here is whether you're running DSP or not, what is the effect that some of our higher funnel ads are having, and how is that creating increased purchase or return rates as people move down a more extended path between different ad types versus, as an example here, right? We could see if I come down to this bottom table, how does someone who sees a DSP ad before a sponsored product ad compare to someone who just sees a sponsored product ad? It's a pretty common example that we see where you'll often see that the purchase rate within a DSP to sponsored product ad or the new to brand rate between a DSP to sponsored product ad is significantly higher than someone who just sees a sponsored product ad because someone making that non-branded search potentially has brand recall from you from seeing a DSP ad, right? So those type of examples are what this report is going to allow us to pull out as we see those more extended path links. Right. The other way we would encourage you guys to take a look at this is looking at the most common paths that come after a specific first touch or before a specific last touch. So I want to see what are the most effective ads that come in before someone sees a sponsored product ad. Right. We're going to touch on bid boosting in a second, but as a quick glimpse, bid boosting is basically going to allow us to bid more, similar to a placement adjustment for a specific audience set than we would for every other user. And we can actually create those audience sets based off of people who have seen other ad types. So if I apply this to what's the conversion rate from people whose last touch has been sponsored products, I might notice that, hey, someone who sees a sponsored display ad has a pretty good return, making up 50% of my sales if they see that before the sponsored product ad. So if I want to move more users down that path, that would be an example where I could create an audience of people who have seen sponsored display ads and use that in bid boosting within my sponsored product ads to bring more of those users down that path that I'm noticing has that higher conversion rate.
There's a question from Maurice we should answer, Kenton.
Yeah.
The question is, these are all nice to know, but what type of actions can be taken after seeing this data? Kenton was alluding to that. I think, Maurice, the identifying paths that either have higher conversion rates or have higher lifetime value or new to brand can then allow you to create those audiences that have been down that path and then use them as levers, let's say in sponsored products for bid boosting, right? That
I
is
would say, yeah, there's probably two ways we would do that, right? So again, like Jonathan mentioned, look for areas where return on ad spend, purchase rate, new to brand percentage is higher. And then I can either use that to bid boost on people who are one path short, right? So if I was looking at sponsored display to sponsored product, I can create an audience of everybody who has seen a sponsored display ad. If I go bid boost for that in sponsored products, that would mean that I'm only still showing to those users if they're searching non-branded keywords as an example, right? But if those users who saw my sponsored display ads are now searching for a keyword where my sponsored product ad could show, I know that those users are more likely to convert based off of this data than someone who just sees a sponsored product ad. So we're going to go in and up bid against those users to try to capture a larger percentage of them that have seen the sponsored display ad prior to that.
The other example I would say is if you scroll down, let's go down below and see, pick your first touch as DSP. So a quick view of everything DSP is doing in terms of performance, the subsequent steps. And so again, identifying paths where let's just say the purchase rate is higher or new to brand metrics are higher, and then creating an audience off of that path and activating those in sponsored products is one of the actions you can take, certainly from path to conversion. The other way you can look at this is you have spent money on sponsored TV and you have no idea what is going on. I would come back here and select my first touch to be sponsored TV as an example, and then see what has that done subsequently to your overall ad performance. And you can do that right here. So can you just select sponsored TV as your first touch, Kenton? Yeah. So analyzing where your spend is going and the impact, and also finding paths where you can create audiences that you can then target in sponsored product and sponsored brand campaigns are the most obvious things to do.
Yeah. Another question that we got was, how are we tracking new to brand and sponsored products? We thought that metric was only available for sponsored brands. That's a great question. By default in the Amazon console, you're correct. That metric is only available for sponsored brand as well as sponsored display. But AMC is going to enable and is the only way to view that data for sponsored product ads because we have that user level interaction data. We can go back and look at a 12-month data period and see if that user has purchased in before. And so that's going to allow us to determine those new to brand rates of purchasers that come from sponsored product ads by looking and checking for past purchases before that.
The other thing I'll say is new to brand, and can you switch to the shopper funnel view that we were going to get to? It's in the other account.
Right.
So one of the things AMC is allowing us to do is to look at new to brand metrics, not just by one campaign type, but across the entire account. So down below, we have a view of new to brand purchases by month. This is a demo account, but across all campaign types, as defined as, hey, whoever has not bought in the last 12 months, for example, you can have a new to brand metric. And frankly, you can make it an operating metric for your business to see how many new to brand customers you're acquiring. You can only do that through AMC. You're no longer constrained by any one campaign type. You could put whatever logic to come up with, or whatever constraint to come up with the new to brand view you're looking for.
I would add, if you're using that 5-year look back period that Srinath mentioned earlier, which is a paid data set, but you can get a trial of it, we could actually extend that new to brand period up to that 5 years. So you could see not only what's the new to brand rate looking at a purchase in the last 12 months, but what's my new to brand rate looking at anybody who's purchased in the last 5 years. And you'll notice typically a decent difference between those two metrics. And not to say that one is right over the other, right? If someone purchased from you 4 years ago and you're in the CPG space with high repeat purchase periods, you're probably still reacquiring that customer. But it's good to have that frame of those two different rates looking at those different look back periods. Another question that we got is, what metric are we using to determine purchase rate that we've been referring to? Yeah, another good question. Purchase rate is just a calculated metric that we have in a lot of our AMC views that we found to be helpful in determining effectiveness between different paths as an example. So purchase rate is just going to be how many users have gone through that path versus how many users have purchased. So if I have 1,000 users who have gone through a path and I have 10 users who have purchased, I have a 1% purchase rate. All right, we might as well skip to the shopper funnel because we're already here, and then we'll go back to those other two reports that you mentioned. I think the main call out is what you mentioned here, Srinath, right? This report that we have in shopper funnel is going to help us measure new to brand versus CAC by a monthly period. This is something that we would typically recommend turning into operating metrics, which is really only possible by AMC and seeing how is my overall new to brand and my cost to acquire new to brand customers trending over time. And that's really going to probably be one of the best measuring sticks that you can have for your overall ad performance, taking, your entire funnel into account versus looking at, direct ROAS, which might be bringing in a lot of return customers, or a mix between branded and non-branded, or DSP ads that don't show strong effectiveness in the console, but when you look at AMC, have strong purchase rates down the funnel. Looking at these two metrics as operating metrics over time is something that we've seen a lot of brands get strong value from. It's something that we would encourage most brands to use as a metric that they look at on a monthly basis to determine effectiveness from an advertising perspective. Srinath, anything else you wanted to add on the shopper funnel side?
No, I think no more on this, but again, make new to brand an operating metric. That's all
Yep.
I'll and AMC makes it happen let you do that.
The next one we're going to touch on here is new to brand gateway ASINs. So again, we just mentioned really the best way to truly measure new to brand, and the only way in most ad type or in sponsored product ad types to truly measure new to brand is through AMC. But the next level where we can break that down a step further is looking at this on a product level. So this report is going to allow us to determine what is the new to brand rates that we're bringing in for each individual product. And so I could see maybe the one product that's driving my highest sales from an ads perspective is actually bringing in a lot of repeat purchasers versus this product here, which might be bringing in a lower total volume, is actually bringing in a much higher percentage of new to brand users. So this might be a product that is a good entry point into my brand. I'm seeing a lot of repeat purchases or secondary purchases of complementary products off of it. And so this would be a product I might want to promote more, even if it's not seeing as directly as a high as an initial ROAS, because I know that I'm bringing in more new customers to my funnel into my brand through this product.
In fact, there was a publishing company that had about 2,400 products. They found that 11, in fact, you can scroll down to see the full list of products. Kenton, yeah, we have this data by product. This is demo data. There's a few things that are wonky, ignore that, but we can run this for your account. But the big decision or change that they were able to make was there were 11 products in a catalog of 2,400 products that had outsized new to brand acquisition rate. So they changed their ACoS targets on those products and moved a lot more budget to those products. Okay, it's also a brand where people were buying other products over a period of time after they made the first purchase. That is one of the most obvious decisions you can make as you look at your current new to brand rates by product.
That's a great call out. Great antidote for
in fact, we have a published case study on the Amazon website. I'll find a link and share it with you momentarily.
Awesome. And then the last one that we had to walk through today, let me switch back over here, is called Shopper Abandoners, which is another one that we've made specifically within Intentwise, so not one that would be available directly in the Amazon AMC console, if that's what you're utilizing, but something that we definitely would recommend looking at on a regular basis. So this report is going to allow a brand to come in and see at what phase in a customer shopper journey am I losing them? Where are they falling off, right? So I'm going to be able to see how many people have abandoned their shopping journey after viewing a detail page, after adding a cart, viewing reviews, adding to wish list, right? And so that's going to allow me to see, is there a specific place where these users are falling off? And then I can take an action off of that to create an audience of those user segments to go and then target them through DSP, sponsored product, bid boosting, right? So if I notice that I have a lot of users falling off after an add to cart, well, this is probably a really high intent segment for me to go in and target within my ad campaigns with an audience. We also break this down by product, which we would recommend looking at, where I can see what's the size of the awareness audience and the intent audience that I have on an individual product level. So I can see that there's 70,000 users on an individual product that have viewed a detail page but abandoned after that. And so that's probably a pretty strong audience for me to go consider moving down the funnel with a sponsored product ad or a sponsored display ad so that I can capture the users that I've already driven ads against and seen a level of success against, right? Because they've clicked into my product and try to move them into that intent and purchase phase.
If you scroll further down, Kenton, we have a full view by product. The first column is telling you how many people saw the detail page view and abandoned versus interacted with reviews or add to carts. Maurice, I'm going to repeat your question. The so what? The so what here is based on this, you can actually create specific audiences off of each specific products, saying, "Hey, I want to target everyone that has added this product to the wish list or a gift add to cart, or maybe just saw the detail page view, and do a bid boost or whatever you want to do on sponsored added." So it becomes a jump off point to create audiences tied to specific product interactions. The other thing I'll call out is sometimes these counts are really low, 100 people, 200 people. That's where lookalike audiences can be leveraged, where you can go from a small pool and allow Amazon to create a large pool of audiences that you can target. That's where you can use lookalikes as well. There's a question here. Are bid boosting on these audiences better than running SD campaigns using these audiences? To be honest with you, it's not what is better versus worse. You should activate them in both. In our case, we have seen a lot more success with bid boosting on sponsored products versus sponsored display. But I don't want to sit here and say don't do sponsored display targeting. You have to activate both, and you have to have bid management in place that is optimizing your bids based on return you're seeing. So I wouldn't make choices like that. I think you should activate in both and keep the ones that are working.
I would frame that as well as you're hitting users at different phases across both of those points. Sponsored display, I can hit users at any time, mostly on Amazon, but even a level of off Amazon as well. So they're not necessarily specifically shopping for my product when I'm capturing them. So if I'm looking at something like a detail page view audience, that could be a great place to hit that because I'm just trying to make those users think about my product category again. Where bid boosting comes into play is bid boosting is only going to do anything different or target those users when they're actually searching for a keyword that you're directly targeting, right? So if I'm selling for Wiser drones and we're targeting the keyword drones, right? Bid boosting is only going to come into effect when someone searches that keyword. So you're often going to see higher return there because those users are intently shopping in your product category when we're taking an additional action against them. So if I was going after someone who added a cart or I was trying to move someone down from a DSP ad to a sponsored product ad, that's where I would potentially lean a little bit more on bid boosting, right? So I will agree that they're definitely not mutually exclusive, but I think you need to have that frame on it in determining which to use for a particular audience, but also in measuring success between the two. Because I'd imagine most of the time you're going to see higher return on ad spend rates from a bid boosting just because of that difference in a customer perspective when they're interacting with the audience.
And we're going to talk more about bid boosting shortly, right, Kenton?
Yeah, well, actually, can jump back over there. So I'm going to jump back to our presentation here, and we wanted to walk through now that we kind of have those use cases framed, a couple frame what bid boosting is for those of you who may not know, but then also what are those use cases that we could be looking at out of the box to help take advantage of that a little bit more.
There's a question. Jackie is asking, where can I see purchase rates? Can you pull up the path to conversion view just so that we call out
Yes.
where you see the purchase rates?
Hey, Jackie, great question.
Right there. I mean, it's right there. So it's
No
right there.
purchase rates here,
Yeah. And
right?
then in the columns below, there should be purchase rate. Well, NTB users purchased is there. Maybe it's a hidden column.
Yeah,
So
I believe
you know,
so. I believe so. I'm just trying to move a
yeah.
couple here, but here, if I scroll down,
I think there's an NTB purchase. The point is, purchase rates are called out in different widgets, and you can also use the column edits to find it and activate it if you don't see it already in your view. And let's keep going, Kenton. So, bit boosting, right? So, yeah, before we jump into this, just some context, depending on what awareness of folks on this call is. Bid boosting is a lever available on sponsored product and sponsored brand, where you can assign an audience to a campaign and go all the way from 0 to 900% of bid boost. Meaning, if the bid on the keyword is $1 and you're targeting that audience, if Amazon finds that audience, it'll bid all the way up to $9 to acquire interaction with that shopper. That's what it means. it's only one audience per campaign. That's definitely a constraint to keep in mind. But that's what Bid Boost is intended
Yeah.
intended to do. The question is, why should you care? Why would I spend more money on the same search that I've already been doing? And so there's, broadly speaking, three potential scenarios. One is somehow you believe that there is a cohort of users that will convert better than your regular shoppers, so higher propensity to convert. Example, anyone that has added a product to the cart or a wish list could fall into that bucket. That is why the views we showed you earlier by product could be interesting. So you can create pools of audiences to go after. Number two is if there is repeat purchase behavior that is better than certain others, right? So maybe you have products where, with subscribe and save, you create a lot of value from it. And how do you go find those users that bought your products but that haven't activated subscribe and save, or some scenarios like that where you can create a cohort that gives you outsized lifetime value. And the last one, of course, are just new to brand. Who doesn't want new to brand customers? So there are these three broad scenarios in which I think bid boosting mathematically makes sense. Otherwise, why in the world would we bid more on the same keyword? Doesn't make sense. So I would keep these three scenarios in mind. And there's all kinds of audiences you can create and experiment with, but they have to fit into one of those three themes. Otherwise, the math doesn't add up.
That's a great frame. I think I would just add, right, because of the nature of how bid boosting works, very similar like a placement adjustment, if you're familiar with that in sponsored product or sponsored brands, you're only spending money on these users when they actually search. I have a very small audience. I'm going against a small keyword set. It may not have a huge top line impact unless I'm going after a large audience against most of my campaigns. But we want to make sure that we're acquiring those customers because it's someone who added a cart is very high intent compared to someone who's never seen my product page before. And so we're going to have, incremental increases on our effectiveness by going after those users.
The other thing I'll call out is, see, there have been a lot of theories around path to conversion for a while. Oh, it's useful this way, useful that way. That's all fine. Hey, people who saw my DSP ad convert on sponsored product better. The problem is there just wasn't a lever on sponsored products to activate. So now what you can do is, if that is really true in the data you're seeing, I can pick a pool of people who have just been exposed to DSP ads and bid boost on them a little bit. These bid boosting levers are another way to connect activity between upper funnel and your lower funnel.
We got a question here on that same point, right? Would it be additional value if I know that the users are seeing branded versus non-branded sponsor product ads? Certainly, definitely could be, right? You probably will see different levels of effectiveness. You also could then see how many users might be doing a branded search after seeing a DSP ad, which would be another metric that's useful to know. Out of the box, that's not something that like the default query is going to segment just because it doesn't have the knowledge of which campaigns are branded and which are not. But if you have some type of definition, whether that's a name contains logic or a one-to-one mapping of a campaign to branded versus non-branded, we can certainly ingest that into the back end of AMC and have path to conversion breakdown on that level of segmentation versus grouping all sponsored product ads together. So if you have that, definitely something that's worthwhile pulling to help you get a little bit deeper into the customer's journey.
There's a question here. Is the shopper funnel selection not available in the drop down? Brian, I cannot tell. Maybe you can respond back. Just confirm for me. Are you talking about the Intentwise platform or are you talking about the ad console, AMC console? The thing to note is there are certain use cases that the Intentwise platform uniquely offers that you cannot find in the ad console. There's two that we covered. Brian, allow us to follow up on that, and we'll make sure
Yeah. Sure
you.
enough, I think that's actually one that's has to be activated by our team. So that Brian, we can work to get that activated in your guys' account.
So just to quickly cover off on these, like I said before, with bid boosting, remember higher conversion rates, higher lifetime value, or new to brand. Under higher conversion rates, here's just examples, right? Like queries or views that will help you find these audiences. Path to conversion and audience overlap are certainly two views where you will find certain combinations delivering higher purchase rate, great candidates to go create audiences. Shopper abandonment, we already showed you that. Whether you want to go after people who have added to cart or seen your detailed page view, that's a great jump off point to go create audience. And there's several questions about, I don't do DSP, is this still valuable? Both those scenarios will be valuable for you whether you do DSP or not. Lifetime value is an interesting one where you can look at after the first purchase, how long does it take for people to come back and buy the second? So you can create a pool of audiences that has purchased your product once and then target them. And then lastly, high value. There will be a cohort of users for your account that purchase frequently, average ad order values are higher, and you can consistently have that pool of audience built, and then you should be willing to pay a higher bid for those shoppers to come back. So these are just examples, by the way, but hopefully ideas to get you started on the types of audiences you can create and target from sponsor product, sponsor brand. There's one more question.
Yeah. Question. So the question's about audience size for bid boosting. Is there an audience size that we found to be the most effective? I would say I don't know if there's a difference necessarily in effectiveness. So the examples were like a 5 to 10K audience versus a 500K audience. I think it's going to depend on where those shoppers are coming from, right? If you have 500,000 users who've added a product to cart, it's probably still going to be effective segment. The difference will just be what the spend difference, how often you're activating that audience, right? Those will happen at different rates between those sizes. As you get to larger audiences, though, right? I mean, a million users, you probably don't have a million users that have added, the same product to cart in the last 30 days.
But
So
you can get, but I would say, I just add that the way you can get to 500 to a million, there's only one way usually. That is to use the lookalike. Let me just add a couple of data points here. Amazon will let you create an audience as long as it's more than 2,000 people. Okay. It's going to let you do that. But what we have noticed is anything below 10,000 or so just doesn't make a difference. You'll not see anything happen. It's pointless. So the larger the audience, the better. But what you don't want to do is, and this is where your testing time frame matters, pick this massive audience and set a 300% bid boost and blow through your money. Don't do that. So that's the part you want to be careful about when you're doing this bid boosting stuff. Also, your bid boosting increments, like don't get to 900%. Just dial that up slowly as you see performance. So that's where I'd be careful about how much am I spending and how big a pool have I chosen. There is no magic answer. Avoid the situation of massive bid boosters and massive audience. A
yeah, I
great way
think
to blow through a lot of money.
the difference is those audiences get larger, more than likely you're getting lower intent, right? Yeah, you're having to create a lookalike audience who maybe not even be the direct users who have added to cart. So that's where, right, maybe I want to create that lookalike audience and I'm going to up it on them by 10%, right? And if I see effectiveness, that's where we can go up 20%, 30%, right? As you start to get data back. But starting off with lower bid boosts against those really large audiences is definitely the place we would recommend starting. Yeah, so under 10K is not going to move the needle, Nick. Yep, definitely would agree. I mean, you can activate them. They'll probably see return against them. It's just with an audience size of that small, especially when you're reliant on those users coming in and completing a search against a keyword in the campaign you're activating against, you're going to see pretty low spend against that audience segment below that 10K mark.
I mean, this was designed to be an agency focused webinar, but there's also brands. But I think the key points we want to leave you with is if you're an agency, AMC expertise is now table stakes, and you cannot go into sales calls without being able to articulate what it is. So that is a given. So investment in learning. Also, Amazon themselves have a great certification course. You'll stumble through it a few times, but that is part of the learning just to understand what is inside AMC. And I recommend this for everybody. You should totally do that. I did that myself. Many folks on our team have, and you should too. The other thing I'll say is there's a lot of questions around what audience to pick and when to use and all of that. I think there's a few things that have worked that we have seen, but honestly, I would cycle through a list of audiences and experiment fast. So this idea of, okay, what questions can I answer and what audience can I cycle through rapidly and build a roadmap and evolve it is going to be key. And the last point here is just experimentation around audiences. Like you want to find the ones that matter and work for you because you're only limited by your ideas in terms of number of audiences. Start with kind of really high intent, lower funnel stuff and then go back up. What I mean by that is product abandoners in different phases are a great starting point for audiences to begin with. And then you can inch up from there. I'll also say, like, at the moment, I'm doing a series of educational posts on AMC, on LinkedIn. Vaibhav, go ahead and share or Kenton, go ahead and share my first post. And then I'm going to do another 25, 30 of those bite sized, takes you 3 minutes to listen to. because there's a lot of knowledge gap and myths around what it can and cannot do, what AMC can and cannot do. So I want to dispel those things. Follow that. Kenton, are you able to drop the link here?
Yeah.
And then,
Also sharing this QR code is also, if you have your phone handy, this QR code will take you straight to Srinath's LinkedIn as well. You can follow along there too.
and then we also have a Intentwise community that you can hop on, and there's a ton of educational content that is being shared. Let me just drop a couple of links here that'll be valuable for you. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Link.
We'll definitely will share the recording out after it. Give us 48 hours, and we'll share that out probably early next week for you. Appreciate everyone jumping on today. If you have any more questions, definitely follow on with Srinath's content or reach out to us directly. You can email us. You find us on LinkedIn, email us, kenton@intentwise.com or srinath@intentwise.com. And we're happy to help answer any further questions that might come up, help you think about AMC roadmap. So definitely feel free to reach out, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.